Today's topic may be the least glamorous part of IT, but it's also the one you literally cannot live without: infrastructure and operations. It's everything that happens behind the scenes: the servers, the storage racks, the Wi-Fi you curse when it drops, the help desk that saves you when you forgot your password and you can't log in. Infrastructure and operations is the home to the engine room of technology. If it's got a blinking light, chances are you'll find it in infrastructure and operations. Today's guest knows this world better than most. Michael Cartier is the Chief Information Officer at 9/11 Memorial and Museum. His career has taken him through Morgan Stanley, AMC Networks, Broadridge, and Jackson Lewis. He's now responsible for the digital backbone of one of the most meaningful institutions in America. For Michael, though, this isn't just a job. He lost his brother on 9/11. And his leadership at the memorial is about purpose as much as it is about technology. He's making sure the systems work, sure, but he's also ensuring that remembrance, education, and resilience live on through digital innovation. So today we're talking infrastructure and operations, the invisible but essential work that makes everything else in technology possible. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Doug. Happy to be here.
Mike, your story is powerful and personal. We're going to get into the whole infrastructure and operations thing, but I'm really interested. Can you share what brought you to 9/11 Memorial and Museum and what this role means to you on a personal level?
My role at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum is more than a job. It's a calling, specifically because my older brother, James Marcel Cartier, who was a very proud Local 3 electrician, 26 years old, lost his life in the South Tower. So he was contracted to Aon, and I actually had my sister Michelle was working for Lehman Brothers. She was in the North Tower, and the difference between the two, she evacuated. The difference between the two is she was below impact for the plane in the North Tower. My brother was above impact, and unfortunately, he got stuck and he lost his life in the collapse. So, as you can imagine, it was devastating to myself and my family. But we definitely responded. We were very involved in the advocacy for information to the families, and then ultimately leading up to the design of the memorial. So it was unique in the sense that being involved in the early days of the selection process for the design. And then so many years later, this opportunity came up, and I had an opportunity to come back and honor my brother's memory, as well as the memory of so many beautiful people that died on 9/11, as well as the 1993 bombing, in a way that I feel like, as a technologist, it's technology meeting remembrance and passion for
I love that.
These two worlds. So yeah, it has been an absolute calling. I'm very grateful to the opportunity. I'm very happy to be a part of an amazing team that's keeping their remembrance alive for all the people that were lost.
So for all those years of building your way up in infrastructure and operations and getting to this leadership level, you were already connected to this organization through the tragedy and events of 9/11 back in 2001. That's incredible. It must have a real personal drive to it in terms of the amount of effort you put in and, what you like to see happen. But that journey along the way, like, how did that prepare you for the role that you're in today? All of this, because you've been a kind of hardcore infrastructure and operations guy, right? You've got that geek cred to the core.
Yeah,
So how has that gotten you to where you are today?
When you think about the actual event on September 11th, what happened from a technology standpoint, I think for many of us, we quickly realized the importance of resiliency, DR, BCP, certainly our backup and recovery operations, you know, so
Editor here again, back with another quick explanation. So Mike just mentioned disaster recovery, or DR, and business continuity management, or BCM, as it's said. Disaster recovery focuses on the IT side of things, how you restore systems, data, infrastructure after something that bad happens, like ransomware attack, data center outage, natural disasters, so tech comes back online quickly. Business continuity management is the bigger umbrella that asks, how do we keep the business running at all? Covering people, processes, locations, and communications so critical work can continue during and after a disruption, even while IT is still in recovery mode. So in simple terms, BCM is the plan to keep the shop open in some form, and DR is the plan to get all the lights, systems, and data fully back to normal.
I think the journey with that in mind absolutely resonates, but not only from the mindset of technology, but the resiliency within our family unit, you know, and so many families that were impacted, as well as people not directly impacted. You know, as a country, as a world community, we all had to be resilient. The markets were crippled. But we had to press forward, you know. So I think with that in mind, that's always been a part of. I mean, 9/11, like many people, it changed my life. It changed my life significantly. It shaped core principles of what was most important to me. Obviously, my family, but again, the drive to keep moving forward, even in the face of so much difficult adversity, you know. So I think that particular event has shaped my path forward. And I've certainly had some adversity beyond 9/11 along the way, but that experience has helped me quite a bit. Weather that storm, keep it going, understanding that you know the storm will pass, you know, and yet you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Yeah. I never really thought of the whole resiliency and how that's as much a part of infrastructure and operations as it is in life, right? You know, just events and tragedies come and we've got to carry on. And the more you have backup plans or different ways of approaching things, a support network to help get through things, right? There's a lot of parallels there. That's a pretty.
And I want to call out the support network, you know, and the parallels, you know, to the experience as a family member, again, trying to work through the emotional impact of the event and the loss of my brother, but within a professional life, you know, the concept of the team dynamic, you know, and the support through such a difficult time in that event, or sometimes what we experience in incidents, it takes a team to overcome that. And you know, it's very difficult to do it alone, and you have to depend on the people around you to get through it. And I learned that lesson way back then, and it's been a constant theme throughout my entire career.
So let's talk about infrastructure and operations for a second, because, you know, most of our listeners aren't going to know what that is, right? You know, it's kind of, I know is how we often call it inside the IT ranks there. But can you tell me in your own words, what is infrastructure and operations?
So infrastructure to me, and the best analogy is in our houses. It is the backbone. It's the wiring. It's the plumbing of everything that we do, of everything that we have. That when you flick that switch on in the kitchen, the light, you expect the lights to turn on, and it's just always there. That is the core infrastructure. This complex matrix of components that make everything work. That is the infrastructure. The operation component are the people and the process that make all of that complexity run smoothly, right? Where when you flick that switch, the lights turn on, and your expectation and reality are perfectly aligned. So, you know, technology is your data center, your servers, your laptops, your network data center, cloud, all of these things that we hear about. The operations are the people and the process that they employ to keep all of that running in harmony and as smoothly as possible.
Wow. Yeah, pretty complex, and it's something that I know from my experience that when it breaks, everyone's upset, right? But when it works, no one's even paying attention. It's just like, hey, the sun rises and sets every day, but the one day it didn't come up, right? Everyone is like really upset. Is there any example or story you have of like a save the day moment, something, an event that occurred and people had to pull together to keep the show running?
There's a lot that comes to mind, but even as you were just saying that, for those anybody who's watching, anyone who's worked with me, I have a saying that I often say, being in the trenches of infrastructure and operations and especially service, that you could save the day 1,000 times a day, and sometimes no one will know any better. But we're all human, and sometimes we slip up and we fall, and that sometimes that one time can land us on the front page of the New York Times. It's that unbelievable metric and the great challenge of I&O teams out there. But there you asked about a critical a major outage. I'm relatively new to the 9/11 Memorial Museum, so I'm fortunate that there hasn't been any major outages since I've been there. But there are so many that come to mind. I remember a time where we had a really difficult spanning tree problem that kept bringing down various VLANs and switches across the network. That was a big one. I won't mention any names. I'm sure others have dealt with this, but we had a few, actually more than once, a telco working in the area cut our fiber. And that was really, really impactful. But that's where I&O really earns their money, because that's when incident management is invoked. That's when you get on a call and then you get to test how good your process and procedures are, and how good the people you have to employ it. So I can think of so many more. I have enough battle scars that come to mind, but there's definitely some painful ones that lasted longer than we want. But one thing that remains true is whether the team responded in a positive way and in a successful way, where it was a quick recovery, or one of those times it was a moment for development. We just didn't do well. It's a constant, continuous learning process. Where we do well, we still go through the methodology of understanding what we did well, how could we improve? And when we don't, it's the process of reflecting back, doing that post-mortem, and finding the opportunities of how could we avoid these events from happening again in the future.
Yeah, and a great analogy. You mentioned the incident management. A great analogy is a lot like a firefighter or an emergency team or whatever. When something breaks or there's an accident or something, the bell rings, right? And everyone's got to jump into action and fix it as soon as possible. Of course, we're not talking lives on the line and the incredible things that firefighters do, but the parallel is certainly there in terms of getting action from an event or an incident that occurs. So. Amazing. What, over your time working in this space, what's changed the most, right? Like if you roll back 10 years and you think about what it was like and where you are today, has it gotten easier? Is it harder? What are you seeing?
That's a good question. So I'd say over the last 10 to 15 years, the biggest one that stands out would probably be cloud adoption. That's a big one.
And for our listeners, cloud adoption means what to an organization?
So that is taking the systems, running your applications and your email and things like that, and instead of running it in a server room in your business or in a data center that you're leasing, that you move it into a cloud like a Microsoft or an AWS, and most of the physical infrastructure that you would be paying for is then moved is moved by one of those providers. So
Okay.
so for many organizations 10, 15 years ago, that was, top of mind priority. I would say that that stands out. Within the last 5 years, I would say COVID created this massive diverse workforce. Everybody wants to be mobile. A lot of people working remotely, and that's where cybersecurity comes into play. How do we protect our business and a lot of the people out there from these threats, from viruses, malware, all the things that you hear about? That became challenging. That was a new dynamic. And of course, within the last year or so, I would say the biggest change that's in everybody's faces right now, it's AI. AI is it's just about everywhere. It's in our personal lives, it's in our professional lives. It is the unicorn sprinkly dust that's going to solve every problem, and fix everything. So
That's right.
Hey, listener. If you're curious about that sparkly dust that Mike is talking about and want to hear a little bit more about artificial intelligence, head on back to episode 6. We interview Blake Rooney all about artificial intelligence and its impact on the world.
You asked, what's been the biggest challenge? I think getting people to be realistic about the expectations around what AI is going to give us is probably been the most difficult in my role. Like getting people who think it's going to solve every problem to realize that, hey, well, this takes time. We have to be thoughtful about how we use this technology, and also it costs money. It's not, in some cases, it's not free. The marketplace is certainly taking advantage of the appetite to embrace this technology. So I would say those are what stand out to me the most.
Great observations. Yeah. And now sitting in the CIO chair, right? What keeps you up at night you look back in your infrastructure and operations past, and now sitting in the CIO chair, what part today, and I don't just mean 9/11 Memorial and Museum, I mean, in general, the job, what gives you the most worry or concern from the leadership chair?
Right off top of mind, cybersecurity, right? So keeping all of our digital assets or digital estate protected is always top of mind. That's a no-brainer. But there's others. I think that disaster recovery and business continuity is another big one. Making sure that when we fail, people can still do their jobs. Like that. Yeah. That is something that. Do we have a sound process in place? If there's another COVID, right? So that's probably the biggest one. And it's not only systematic failure. It's things outside of our control, like Mother Nature or something like that.
Right.
I would also say other things that come to mind would be expectations of our user community, right? And that's from a service perspective. Like service is so important to me. If technology is not providing the best service to our people, then what are we really doing here, right? So they should be very happy with the service that we are providing them and the technology that we are giving them to be the most effective in what they're doing.
Right. Because ultimately it's about the people, right? I mean, tech is fun. It's great to work in it. But if nobody's using it or getting value from it, then what are we doing?
For sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Doesn't make sense. Now you balance at the museum, you balance this world of infrastructure and operations excellence with creating a meaningful experience on a subject that's very sensitive to a lot of people, right? How it's presented, how it works, how it's, reaching out to the community. How do you find that balance, right? How do you bring the two together between kind of service excellence and, that experience that the museum needs to provide?
So I'm in a unique position because of the intimate nature and the connection that I have with the museum and the memorial. So to the point where, my commute, where I get off the train, I cross the street, and I literally walk by the panel in the memorial with my brother's name on it almost every day, right?
Wow.
So, and it's a moment where I could touch his name, and it's a reminder of how important the structure is, the facilities around it, the experience that people have, but also the experience that I have. When I arrived, I connected immediately with the with most, if not all, of the teams in the memorial. I'm sorry, in the museum, to understand the operation, and they were very generous with their time. And I got to understand end to end the experiences, but both as the CIO, but also as a family member. There are exhibits with my brother's name on it, right? So I think you mentioned balance. For me, the balance I try to seek is this relentless need for operational excellence and wanting everything to be perfect, because it's literally, it's memorializing and remembering my brother and so many other people. So it's very, very important to me. And it's important to all of us. It is technology leaders, ensuring that the experience for our customers is first class, right? This is a little different, for me, and it's
powerful.
nothing that
Wow.
I've worked in revenue, where revenue was top priority. This is a completely different experience for me. So I would say, if it can be challenging, because I'm constantly striving for 100%, but things happen. There's light bulbs go out, right? Like we have projectors.
That's the thing with tech; it's always
right?
failing, right? Something's
It's
always
gonna
breaking.
happen. So it's but we have an amazing team, and a very, very quick response, and similar to past employments where we're tied to the market and SLAs. There's very tight SLAs. We have almost the same response to the experience within the museum, where we want for our visitors, we want the experience to be respectful, and our response is appropriate to that.
That's such a powerful connection to the mission that you have with the role and putting the dots together. Amazing. How do you move that into the rest of the team, right? Maybe who don't have the same level of connection. It's so easy in infrastructure to be that back office geek, right? That person who's just, I'm going to disappear in the closet and be with the machines and life goes on.
And
but
I'm
at the end of the day,
I can be guilty of that. I am an absolute geek to the heart. I think that storytelling in any technology leadership role is so important. I think, one, to share the experiences for the people I intend to lead, to elevate them. That's a big part. I've had so many great people mentor me across my career that I feel an obligation to pay it forward. So, and the story I often tell, especially just recently, we went through the commemoration of the 24th anniversary, and part of my plan for that day was to connect my team with very specific stories of my family, my brother, and other people that I knew that passed away. We either through the tragedy, we made friends and we learned about other people, or I had other people from my old neighborhood that passed away. Those stories, I think, connect to people in the trenches to understand that their work is directly tied to someone very close to them within the organization, and how meaningful it is and how important it is. So it's, that's, but I've always been that way. I'm a storyteller, sometimes to a fault. I like to tell a good story, especially if it's a funny one. And but that's something I've been doing since I arrived at the museum.
It's great. Yeah, connecting them through story. Story is such a powerful thing. What's the best compliment that they can ever get for an I&O team? What's the best compliment that you guys can get?
Yeah. So, so I have my saying, you can save the day 1,000 times and nobody will ever know. I think the best compliment that comes to the ones that come to mind that I can remember, because I like to be transparent, I like to, so there's been times where I've walked into my leadership's office and I've said, "Hey, listen, we just had a major incident." And one of the best compliments I ever got was, "Oh, I didn't even notice. Nothing was down." And it was like, "Really? Okay, fantastic."
Yeah.
That means our resiliency worked. Our recoverability was quick. And I went back and I remember telling my people, like, "Hey, listen, I was expecting to get beat up, and this ended up being a pretty good compliment." So that's one. Another one that comes to mind is you saved the day. You saved the day today. That was another one, because that allows me to really create visibility for the people who are in the trenches doing this work and do amazing work. It's especially in service. Services can really be tough. You have a lot of users to make happy, and when we hear something like, "You made my life easier today," like those are just great compliments. I think for a technologist.
Hey, listener, Mike just mentioned IT services. Think of IT services as everything the tech team does that you rely on to get work done. Email, Wi-Fi, business applications, laptops, password resets, and fixing things when they break. Instead of the random call the IT guy chaos, good IT service management means there are clear ways to ask for help, track issues, roll out changes, and keep systems running. So your tech feels more like electricity. It's always there when you need it, and ideally, you don't have to put too much thought into it.
Yeah. And so people centric again, right? Like it's all about you made someone's life easier. It's not about a cool new technology that was put in. It's the result of someone using that technology that really gets all technology people, I think, excited about what's happening. Well, let's roll it back or take it up just a little bit higher in terms of, I ask every guest on the podcast, what is IT? Right? Like when you look at the world today, how would you describe IT and what it is?
Technology is a tool that should improve our productivity, make our lives easier, and it should be something that improves our lives, right, in one way or another. So at a very high level, that's what technology is for me. And I think that technology could be something that's different in the context of your personal life as well as your professional life. In your professional life, it should be the tool that will create innovation for your business, be the driver for that. But it's not only the technology, but the technologist running it. I very often I love to use the analogy as technologists that there's a lot of creativity involved with it. And I've often said that, especially when you're designing and building something, it's like an empty canvas. That you start with a blank Visio page sometimes, and you're mapping, or you're just an empty page of what you want to build, and there's a lot of creativity that goes into it. And like I said, I am a geek, and I'm just one of those people that find it a lot of fun. So it's something that that I love to do, but ultimately it should improve our lives. It should make us more productive, whether it's in our personal life or professional life.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I love the fun part too, because a lot of technology people are builders and creators, and they like to, make things happen. And then when people use the creations, it just gives this buzz that's exciting, right? And fun. out there, but the utility is really important. It's got to have an application there that people are getting value from to make it worthwhile. Let's talk a little bit about your leadership in terms of what you've gotten a lot of experience to get to where you are today. You've probably mentored and managed a lot of individuals along that path. I'm curious, if you were talking to someone who's just starting out on their career, just moving into infrastructure or IT in general, what advice would you give them?
The advice that I would give aspiring technologists is to learn the fundamentals. A good A+ certification or a Network Plus certification where you're going to understand how networks are subnetted or understanding hardware, I think is still important. And it will give you an appreciation of some of what you're going to be working in. So I would start with that. I would also say that, like you mentioned mentorship. I think that, and I've had different, I've evolved, with regard to receiving mentorship, and I would definitely say that you have to recognize when there's people around you willing to give you advice, to listen, especially if that advice is tough to hear. And that's, I'll share, Doug, you're great at giving advice. I've reached out to you so many times to ask advice over the years now that I've known you. And one thing I appreciate about you is just how honest and sometimes brutally honest, and you sometimes it's tough to hear, but it's so important, and you're going to meet a lot of people. But as you learn, I would also say pay it forward. I had the privilege of working with someone when I was at Broadridge. His name was Frank McGinnis. He was an incredible leader. He had this ability to make everybody feel special that was around him. He elevated all the people, certainly elevated me over the course of my time there. He was a very special person. Unfortunately, he passed away, a relatively young man, 55 years old. But I learned from him how important it is to now take what he gave me and instilled in me, and now I have to pay it forward. So, and really one of the things that I took away from him is that, how many people loved him, and when he passed away, at his wake, there was partners, there was people that had previously left the company, and they all came back, and it brought it back to like what really matters in life, and the fingerprints that we put on the people we care about, and we touch, how important it is. And what young people may not realize is you may be around some people early on in your career that are going to shape who you are for the next few decades, right? And take all the advice that they could give you.
And that in itself is fantastic advice. So true. When we're young, we often don't even see it, or sometimes we feel that, they don't want to spend time with us, we're annoying them. And I find most of the time the opposite is true, that, like you're saying, people want to pass on and share a lot of the learnings that they had. And your story about Frank, that's really powerful. I think as you get older and you lose people, the greatest tribute you can ever pay them is taking things that they taught you and helping to teach others, right? Keep their legacy alive through their teachings. Absolutely. And the people that they've touched.
He was a special guy. So, he's always on my mind, and I often will think, like, what would he do in this situation? And it's usually the right thing to do.
Amazing. Well, I got to call it out, Mike, just that you are not what most people would expect as a geek infrastructure and operations guy, right? The heartfelt stories, the purpose-driven life, like all these things are really incredible and well put together. just thank you for sharing all those stories and really connecting us to the people that connected with you. Powerful, and for embarrassing me for being one of them. But I
didn't get
the
into
call-out.
how I stalk your Goodreads, I don't want to pour it on, Doug, but you've got a great Goodreads, some of the best leadership books that are out there. 5 Levels of Leaderships, Start with Why. It's fantastic book selection. So anybody else watching, try to get your hands on Doug's Goodreads.
Well, we'll put it in the notes for the podcast.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, you have some really great stuff.
Thank you. But it's the same story that people who have touched my life and brought things into my life, just passing along. You take the tidbits and the pieces. I often feel that life is a giant jigsaw puzzle, and you get some pieces and they fit together. And when you've got a little bit of the story, you share that with others, because
Sure.
together we can build
absolutely.
a pretty picture, right? So, all right, let's do something fun. A speed round here. Close us out for just talking about something I ask all of our guests. As technology people, we're always seeing like, oh, you know everything about technology and you've got all the answers, but it couldn't be farther than the truth sometimes, right? What's the last thing that you Googled that was technical in nature that you probably should have already known?
Oh, that's a little embarrassing. So I won't say which, because I am an I&O leader, and I also I'm certified. So all I'm going to say is, I will share it. Because I feel like I should know. But I actually forgot. We're going through an audit, and it's an Active Directory audit, and I forgot the port for the global catalog in Active Directory. For any geek out there, that's something that should be like this. And I was embarrassed because I was a self-described Active Directory expert master, and I guess over the years I'm getting rusty, so I had to Google it.
While Mike might need to know how to do this as an infrastructure and operations leader, you, listener, probably don't need us to explain to you the port for global catalog in Active Directory.
So I'm being honest here.
Thank you, Google. Thank you, AI, for helping us older guys stay on top of that stuff, right?
Sure.
How about favorite old school gadget, something geeky from your past that you missed today?
Oh, so without a doubt, the old school Novell NetWare operating system, as well as my kids would say, it was low key the best directory service. NDS was a great great directory service, great before it was the mainstream premier directory service before I would say Microsoft launched Active Directory. So definitely Novell NetWare from the past. I really miss it. It was a good OS.
Yeah, good stuff. How about an analogy here? If infrastructure and operations were a theme park ride, what would it be?
So one, I'm not a big roller coaster person. So I'm going to use this analogy. I'm not a big roller coaster person, right? So I was the guy that held all the pocketbooks when you went to Great Adventure, right? But in Universal Studios, there's a roller coaster called the Mummy, right? And if you've ever been in it, you go in and it's like dark. It's pitch dark. So you can't see anything. So for me, I&O is similar to that in the sense that, you're in this roller coaster and it's going to take you on this path, right? And there's going to be surprises along the way, like they're unexpected. You just didn't plan for. A mummy shows up, but that's like, that's the outage. But and it can be scary, right? So you're going through this thing. But one of the things that I tell myself as I'm in this, because it's one of the 3 roller coasters I've been on, is that, well, one, there are safety protocols. There's protocols in place that protect us from the unexpected, right? And also there are operators monitoring the ride, that if something goes wrong, they'll stop the ride for me. If I'm hyperventilating because I'm too afraid, they're going to stop the ride for me, and they will, they're going to they're going to help me out, right? They're going to fix the problem so we can get back on track, right? But ultimately, the ride starts off nice and smooth and it ends nice and smooth, right? It's just sometimes there's things that will happen, but provided you have the right people and you have the right process and the right technology in place, when those scary things pop up unexpectedly, you should come out fine.
Love it. Love it. That's the ride that burns your eyebrows off, right? That one part with the fireball. It's like,
yeah, it's one of the 3 roller coasters I've been on. I'm not, and only because I was forced to go on. Right, so.
All right, last question here. If you could roll back the clock, and maybe not willingly, but young Mike, IT doesn't exist. The technology path doesn't open for you. You don't go down that road. What would you be doing today?
So I'm gonna add another caveat to that. I would 100% without a second thought, I would be a teacher. I would love to be a teacher, whether it's grammar school, high school, middle school, I don't care, right? I would love to be a teacher. I'd love to be in the classroom. I love to acquire knowledge. I hope that I will always be a student of leadership, but I will always be a student of technology. I can never get enough of it. But then I love to share what I know and teach people. I was like my kid's coach, always doing the corny stuff to get a good laugh out of the kids. And I just love to watch them through the learning process. And I just love to share. I would absolutely be a teacher.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Always committed to some purpose or another, right? It seems that you've got that heart that wants to help others, and that's awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, for coming on to the podcast. Really appreciated having you here today. Thank you for sharing that very personal and incredible story of what you've been through and how you're connected to your work. I found it incredibly moving and powerful. And thank you and everybody at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum for what you do, keeping this icon from tragedy, but so much inspiration and resilience that comes from that space and understanding. I really appreciate what you guys do. So thank you.
My pleasure, Doug. Happy to be here. This was great. A lot of fun.
That's it for this episode of What is IT, where Michael Cartier showed us that a leader in infrastructure and operations can be so much more than just technology. It's about that heart, that resilience, that soul to keep things running. And nobody knows this space better than Mike, a man who walks past his brother's name on the 9/11 memorial every single day, carrying the grit and the courage to keep going and making sure that the systems continue to operate for millions of visitors every single day. Mike showed us that that heart, that leadership, that courage is alive and well in IT, as is the geek he loves, things like remembering the port number for your Active Directory server or for having Novell NetWare bring back memories like an old friend. Next week, we're going to change things up. We've talked about security, we've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about AI, but next time we're going to talk about people. Our guest is Taylor Anderson, and we'll be talking about women in IT, why diversity matters, and why it's super important for technology to get this right for its future and for the future as the industry as a whole. Until then, remember that IT is made up of people like Mike Cartier, people who can be geek to the core, but still lead with a heart.